Hello, everyone. Hey, y'all. Come on in the room. Taking the stage is taking over Alice Opera's Instagram for a little while. I'll wait for my fabulous friend and co-host, Quo Johnson, to join us, and then we will get into it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for hopping in. Thank you for coming in. Welcome, welcome. Please, let's do a check-in. Tell me how you're doing, where you're from, that sort of thing. Where do you call home? And tell me how you're doing while we wait for my fabulous friend and co-host, Quo Johnson. I'm Kristian Roberts. There she is. Oh, there she is.
Oh, let me
Hey,
see.
Quo.
Hello. Hello to you. Hello to everyone who's joined into the space. How are y'all today?
I've asked everybody to check in. Tell us
Nice.
where you call home, how you're doing.
Nice. And that was kind of this commitment that we picked up in experiencing how a lot of people were impacted during the pandemic.
Yep,
At the onset of the pandemic, we're still in it, right? But
yep.
the ways in which we were so used to just hopping into meetings in a lot of spaces, and it was no, let's find out how people are doing. Let's ask and
Yeah,
say what you up to, what's going on today, because we don't put things away and we don't become different people just because we have to log in or go
yeah.
into a meeting or
I'm
come
going
to
to
work.
space. Yeah,
Nice. Welcome
it's part of
everyone.
it.
Welcome, welcome. We are live today for today's episode of Taking the Stage with Kristian and Quo. So it's a takeover.
Of course. Okay. We like taking over once in a while.
Cool, cool.
Our friends in the Northeast, let us know how you're doing. We heard you had some flooding up there, so please, please, by all means, let us know how you're doing. Friends in
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana are
Mm-hmm.
without power, so we want to make sure you
Welcome.
all are all right. Know that our thoughts are with you.
Yes,
Haiti,
absolutely.
Afghanistan, all the places that are having so much trouble, our wildfires out west, just please let us know how you're doing if you're able. Know that our thoughts are with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're with you. So it's rough out there right now, but we're thinking about you. Most definitely.
So, Kristian, I'm going to leave it to you to kick off today's episode.
We'll kick it off. We're sorry a little late. We had some technical difficulties. It seems to be the size of things if you're going to be working with technology. But um, I'm Kristian Roberts. I'm here with my fabulous friend and co-host. We freeze?
No, you're back. Go for it.
Oh, it's gonna be one of those days. I'm here with my fabulous friend and co-host,
Quo DC Johnson.
and we are, of course, back with another episode of Taking the Stage with Kristian
And Quo. And of course,
live.
live. As we begin all of our episodes, both live and recorded, we do so with a land and people acknowledgement. This practice is important in the work that we do because it talks about connection. It is about truth telling. It is about owning the histories and owning the things that we've inherited, though we have not created them. We've inherited these things, and we've inherited the ability to heal the harm through truth telling and through community so that we can move forward together, not move past it, but to move forward informed and empowered with agency. So with this, I would like to acknowledge that we here in Dallas, we are on stolen land. We are on the land of the Caddo, the Wichita, and the Comanche sovereign nations, nations of human beings, of beautiful souls who lived the full human experience, nations who loved, who lost, who fought, who cultivated the land's time immemorial, but all faced inhumane conditions, including that of genocide and policy that allowed for forced removal by any means necessary. Dallas is not alone in this, as the entire nation benefits from stolen land. So it's important that we talk about this to acknowledge that we are on stolen land that was built with stolen labor. People were stolen from their homes and brought here to Dallas and forced into enslaved labor. From that free and enslaved labor, we have what we now enjoy as Dallas, Texas. My last name is Johnson. Miss Roberts here, his last name is Roberts, not because that is the name of our ancestors, but because we're descendants of enslaved people. That's a part of the stories that we carry with us as we look at what it means in opera to tell human stories. What does it mean for us as human beings to tell our full stories and to be in full spaces together? So with that, I thank you for joining us for our Land and People Acknowledgement for today's episode.
And we thank you for joining us on this live episode today. I always want to give a shout out and love to our brother and our friend, Nafi Lomeli.
Hey, David.
We miss you, friend. Hope all is well. But we also want to make sure that we thank you for continuing to join us and continue to support, for your encouragement. And just a shout out to the Dallas Opera staff, of course, and leadership. Very much appreciated. Hello, everyone who is currently watching on their lunch breaks at the, at the moment. If you are watching, we definitely appreciate you as well. So today we wanted to talk about, we recognize and realize, as we said at the very top of this episode, that our thoughts are with you. There is so much going on in the world right now. The pandemic is ongoing. We have seeing rises in cases right now, and we know how it affects the arts. We know that it's tough to, try to see the forest for the trees, as it were right now. Considering everything that's going on, we know there is a lot of hurt and distress and things going on in the world right now. A lot of people have lost homes. There's been a lot of lives lost from natural disasters. Just many things that have a tendency to weigh on us. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that, and in terms of how we returned to our space. We did an episode called The Pause. I think that was episode 60. Where we talked about some of this and remembering our humanity during this time. And so today's episode that we've come up with is humanity at the root. And that is not an accident. We discussed heavily about the musical term. Think about back to your music theory. One, I know a lot of us have slept a lot since then. You might have to dust cobwebs, but we talk about the root of the chord, and how we build on that chord. Everything is built from that chord, from that root, that is. And so humanity is the root of the chord that we try to build within our organizations and just within our society, and how we are with each other, how we exist alongside each other, how we produce these stories that tell of the human condition with each other. And so Quo and I had a discussion about this earlier this week about what we want to speak about. And this is what we want to talk about today, because as we move into trying to figure out how to get back in our traditional stages, in a very tumultuous time right now, as we are making into our offices, transitioning back into our offices. Some people have been back for quite some time now. With new safety protocols and all of these different things, that we not forget in the hustle and bustle of trying to get back to work, that we are human, and it takes human to do the kind of work that we're trying to do with each other within our organizations. Your organizations are built of people. And I say that as someone who understands how much just putting an opera together, how it does not come up off the page until we bring it off the page. So humans physically work to do that. So, Cole, let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk about it a little bit. We won't be before you long. Now, whenever you hear that in a church,
I was going to say.
Long is to the interpreter, right? What length is, but in terms of sermons. But Let's talk about this a little bit because it is really important right now, particularly as we're seeing this surge in cases, and we talked about the humanity in this and how to behave, how behavior changes and such in a time that's so difficult. So, what are some of the things that organizations should be looking at given the current situation?
Yes. So in this, thank you for the introduction for the episode and what it means for us to build our work on humanity and the connections that we started to make in what it means for us to share space with one another. What does it mean for us to do work together? For this, we wanted to provide practical tools. We want to talk about it, want to get into it, but then we want to provide practical tools as well and the necessary ways that we have to lead with humanity. Humanity is a very broad term that just describes how we act as human beings. And those things are not always the most pleasant things, but they do allow us to adapt. They allow us to understand. They allow us to be inquisitive. They allow us to be creative. They allow us to be fearful, right? And to respond to our fears as well. So we wanted to honor the very nature of who we are as creatures, as human beings, but then to lead that, to allow that to lead the work that we're doing. As we are telling human stories, it is important that, one, we learn the stories of the human beings in the space. So let's start with that. In looking at what it means for us to start with humanity, it's those very real opportunities within our organizations to connect as human beings. We start with a check-in. There's an opportunity for so many of our organizations, instead of getting straight to the work, we're here to work. We have jobs. That is how this art form moves forward right now in this model. As we get into the work, before we just hop straight into it, check in with people. Ask people how they are doing. Pay attention to what it means to be a entire dissertations in one way or the other, but just to be able to acknowledge that we are coming into the space with something. We are hoping to gain something while we're in the space, in the meeting, right, or in the gathering, and that we will continue to be dealing with things once this meeting is over. In this, it provides a very real opportunity, not for us to just connect, but for us to allow those connections to inform the work. We say so often at the Dallas Opera, allow the things that you learn about one another, allow the things that you learn about how we prefer to work with one another to inform how you will continue to work with others. So that's one tool we can use, right? Don't just get back straight into the work, check in, just ask how people are doing. That's it. So, step away. And if you catch yourself, okay, well, let's get to this, take a break, take a beat. Take a beat. We want to make sure that as we're building this core, as we're building this score, as we're building this work on the root of humanity, that we're mindful of what it means to have those spaces in between, that we're mindful of what it means for us to add other voices, to add other notes, to add the rest of the story. And it's important that we understand where the root is and what we're trying to do. So that's one of my practical tips. I'm going to pause there and I'm going to pass it back to you, Chris. Let me know.
Practical tips. So in this, because that's a bit unorthodox, right? Because, we're here to work, right? We come in, we work, leave your personal life at the door, right? That's what we normally hear in work culture, that grind culture. And there is a point to that. You can't, we do have a business to run. Right? There's a business to run. We do have work to do. We have a job to do. The thing is that if the human is not well in some way or is having an issue someday, it's hard for somebody to produce their best work.
Yeah.
And so often in the quest for productivity and the fact that we there's a sense in our society that your work equals your worth.
Yeah.
People immediately want to jump in and say, and get to moving. And that's where the disconnect happened. I get that's what people say. And we all we all have some kind of mission in life that we're trying to work towards. And we all have skills and talents that we are trying to build things with, whatever that looks like. But I think it's vitally important that, like you said, we take a minute just to say, how are you?
Yeah, just say how are you.
And make space for that, and make it, and be sincere in that, and not just say, let's get this out of the way. We got to do it. They said it was a good practice, so let's just do it. That it's something that's sincere, so that the work can be done, so that human being can present be their full self.
Yeah.
When they come into the space, and bring the best work that they can in whatever space they're in that
Mhm.
day.
Right.
That's very different. That's going to look and feel different from what we're used to. So a lot of times people come in, and I've worked in everything: corporate, fast food, hospitality, all of the types of businesses that young musicians, young artists that we have to do. With serving tables and all that kind of stuff. And you get in, you clock in, you get on the grind. And I think that there's just merit to checking on your people, checking
Yeah.
on the person that you're sitting next to a lot, whether that's somebody you're working with on stage, backstage, or in administrative offices. You are literally spending a lot of time with these people outside of your own home. So to me, that seems to be, let's make an environment where people can bring themselves into the space. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. That's a great practical tip, Quo.
Let's practice number one. I'm gonna do three today. We'll do three
So
practice.
in that, Quo, I want to sidetrack a little bit, because there is pushback when people say, "Well, you're here to work."
Yes, we are absolutely here to work. We are also working in an industry that moves on emotion. So that objectivity, which is actually a supremacy culture characteristic, or the assumption that we can be objective, and that should someone express emotion, should someone express desire, should someone express need, that is human, right? And reasonable, right? Don't tell your staff or your boss, I need a massage chair and all of this so I can feel better at work. But those very real needs of, I need to communicate. I need to be in a space where it is okay to take risks. I need to be in a space where it is okay to fail, right? In the industry that we're in, which is a creative industry, to assume that people should be objective and should separate themselves from the very real act of storytelling is illogical. It is
I
illogical.
agree.
And it is core business practice, which is how we got to where we are. So we have the option to keep doing things the way we've been doing without acknowledging that as human beings, we can do more. We are creative. We can extend that imagination a bit further and acknowledge those boundaries, right? We want to
Yes.
get away from that either or thinking. And that binary thinking of either we are here to work and you do not talk about anything else, or we are completely unproductive and this is a space where we just come and talk about all of our problems. No, right?
No.
In this, we have the ability to navigate spaces, right? We have the ability to navigate that line in a way that is honest, that is sincere, and that truly allows people to be their full selves when they are at work as we share space with others. That's what it means to share space. So there is often the pushback of, this is unprofessional. We are here to work, but let somebody get frustrated in a rehearsal.
I was
Let
just about to
someone
go
with
there.
authority, let someone with a leadership position or a leadership role get upset in rehearsal or during a meeting or because something else happened, and we respond from emotion first, just as human beings. So if we're going to be objective, we don't get to pick and choose when it's time to be objective based
Or
on the
who?
or who gets to, who must be objective or who must dismiss their needs for the comfort of those who feel that it is unprofessional. It's unprofessional of you to expect people to not have to have their needs met in order to do their job.
Yeah.
Just so we address that.
No, and I was about to bring that up, and I want to say that in opera we do this all the time, especially singers and performers, and I want to make this clear, and dancers, people that actually do the physical part of performing. How many times have you been in a rehearsal where you're on a break, got into a real conversation about something going on in your life, and then walked on stage or back in that rehearsal room and done your job?
Yeah.
Because I've done that.
Yeah.
Sylvia Nunez is on here right now. She's part of what we call the MTS in the Dallas Opera Chorus, and she can tell you how many times all of us, our Mezzo T Society in the Opera Chorus, are sitting in the dressing room talking about real things, talking about our children, our nieces, our nephews, things that are going on in our lives. But when that call comes to stage,
Yeah.
it's time to go to work.
Time to go to
So
work.
why should that be any different when you walk into an office and you have things going on in your life? So what I'm saying is that you're capable of doing this. I'm not saying it should be the gossip express. What I'm
Right.
saying is that asking somebody how they're doing is the human thing to do.
And
That's what
it's
I'm saying. I wanted to give you context for how I know it's possible, because I've seen it done in different settings, including in office settings.
we had to do it for the pandemic. We're still doing it for the pandemic. Those
Yes.
days when we just really could not pretend like everything was okay. We
Yes.
still got the work done, but the ability to be in a space that says, hey, this is happening, or hey, how's everybody doing, or what things are you working on? Do you need assistance? We can do both. Which leads me to my practical tip number 2. It
I was
is
hoping it would lead to it.
acknowledge, right? Acknowledge. So first, invite people into the space. Look at the humanity in the space and lead with humanity for the space. Anytime we're working on any piece, anytime we're working on anything together, we start with, what are we doing? What is the story? How do we want to do this? Why do we want people to connect with this? 2, have to acknowledge what has happened or what is happening, what will continue to happen. In this, acknowledge when things are difficult, acknowledge when things are complex, acknowledge when there is failure, and then acknowledge the fact that we've experienced these things before. We can
Mhm.
continue to do the work. We will continue to experience these things. Acknowledge truth in the space. I'll share with one of the things that we found so meaningful for the Dallas Opera, and when we bring Ian on, right, one of the episodes, is the honesty and the transparency that comes with certain parts of leadership leaning into the human side, into the this is difficult, into the this is a pandemic and none of us expected any of this to happen, but we're all in this together.
And
When we
saying I'm sorry.
acknowledge the transparency, when we acknowledge
Yeah.
those difficulties with transparency, it provides us with an opportunity to connect on a human level. We begin to build the cord with the root, right, of
Yes.
humanity. That's our root. And in this, as we acknowledge, it is also okay to say that you don't have the answers. It is also okay to say we can find the answers together. It is
Yes.
okay to say we actually kind of know the answers. Let's acknowledge the things that have happened in
Mm-hmm.
truth. Let's acknowledge when we did not do what we were supposed to be doing as an organization, as individuals, even though we said we were. Let's acknowledge those things. Let's acknowledge that we have a ways ahead of us, but that we can
Mm-hmm.
travel that way together. Right. So as we look at what it means to build these cords, right,
Well, and
with
acknowledge.
humanity at the root, right, and what it
Yeah.
means to check in with people and be honest, to care, to be sincere, and then to acknowledge when there has been harm, acknowledge when there has been connection, acknowledge
Yeah.
when things move us.
Well, and acknowledge that we will make mistakes, but also acknowledge that we will work to figure out how to not do that again.
Yeah. You
You
have to
know,
acknowledge that you made a mistake in order to get there, though. You can't just
come
pull it
on.
over and be like, oh, well, this is okay. That was just this one fluke thing that happened because of that one thing. No, and a lot of times your culture and your practices, your policies, and how you engage with those policies led to that situation. And
Yeah.
it's okay to acknowledge that. It's also okay to acknowledge that you can do better.
Yeah.
So I want to put that in the space too.
Okay.
Let
So
us not
yes,
pretend.
yeah. So that was practical tip number 2.
Yes, yes.
Acknowledge.
Practical tip number 3. This is gonna sound less practical, but I'm gonna weave it in there. In this, lean into creativity and agency. You literally have a staff of people who are putting together what it means to have a career where we play pretend. We are telling human stories. We're telling stories about the human experience. Shout out to Michael Braxton from Pittsburgh Opera.
Mm-hmm.
In his very beautiful way in which he explains that. We are telling stories that are built on the human experience. Allow the human beings in your company to experience their humanity so that they can inform the ways that we tell the stories about human experiences.
Mm-hmm.
There is no need to separate your staff members, no need to separate your community members, no need to separate your board, your guilds, your volunteers from the ability to inform how we are telling stories.
Yes.
Yes, as professionals, those who have studied, we have the ability to profess this craft. Yes, those who have gone to school, who have received certain types of training, who have received certain types of experiences, we are better equipped to put these things together. But that's because we can be vessels in what it means to funnel and to translate those experiences into storytelling. Do not separate your community, your internal organizational community, those human beings, and your external community, right? Those outside the organizations. Do not separate them from the actual art of opera making, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, right? Opera making itself is an art. And it is important that as this art is built on human experiences, we allow human beings to help inform those things.
That
This is
root.
not to say that those who are the professionals, our directors, our stage directors, our music directors, our coaches, our pianists, our artists, our singers, it does not mean that you matter less. It means that you have a beautiful responsibility to continue to tell these stories. But now you have an entire community around you that can assist you in telling those stories and that can better attest to the connections that you are wanting to make with the rest of the community and with the rest of the audience, right?
Yeah.
In this. So that third practical tip is to start to remove the barriers between the staff and the art, the audience and the art, the community and the art, right? And the art making. Start to gather
Yeah.
these people together and start to use that creativity that we lean into in order for us to have a job.
Yeah. It also, I think about agency, because leaders, you have to create a space for your staff to have agency.
And
Um,
sometimes
you know, we can find
you're
ourselves.
back.
Do what? I'm back. Did I skip? Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties. But I will say, leaders, you need to make space for your staff to have agency. I always joke with my own staff, my own team, and I'll say, look, there's no point in me being a captain and having a crew and not listening to my crew. I can't pilot the ship by myself, and mine is a small section of the ship. Okay, so our general director has a much bigger task on his hands, and so in order to be able to do that, we have to listen to our teams. So you need to make sure that they understand that they do have the agency to come to you with ideas, to come to you and talk about a work that we're doing or a project that we're doing that might not be in their job description. Okay, but they are part of the organization, and especially if they're from a community that's going to be affected by the type of storytelling and the story you're going to tell. It is very important that you have a conversation with your staff members who are part of that community. Okay.
And in
Um,
having a conversation, right? Follow these practical tips. Check in, acknowledge, open the space for creativity. This does not mean, because sometimes we inadvertently do this, that we go to those individuals who represent those communities or who are impacted by those communities and say, well, what do you think about this? We don't want to make one person the spokesperson for an entire community, because that is not fair. Nor is it equitable, and it honestly creates a very harmful impact for that person if they have not volunteered to speak, right? If they have not volunteered to share their experience.
Absolutely. And
But
that's why I say check in, because you need to let them know how much they want to be involved in that process. You
check
need to
in.
check in, and if that is, you know what, I'd love to help out on, or if that's, you know what, that's not my ministry, then you need to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, but
And,
they need to have the agency to be able to express that to you either way.
and acknowledge that we can tell stories, and stories are better told when they come from the source.
Mm-hmm.
Stories grow and expand in beautiful ways as different experiences and interpretations are added. But as we start with the root, right? What is the root of the story? What is the root of this experience? Where's humanity in the root of what we're trying to create? And that comes with acknowledging that all voices are not the best voices for all stories. That is completely okay, because as we follow practical step number 3, we start to open the space for creativity. We start to have brainstorming meetings. We start to have meetings where people gather and have conversations, knowing that people will check in, knowing that people will acknowledge, knowing that they'll be able to be in creative spaces together. So those are my 3 practical tips for humanity at the root.
Well, you have heard it here today, and you've heard my belly aching along with this. But I wanted to speak as somebody who does lead a team and understand that if you don't give people the space to do that and to talk about these things, you have to create that environment. You have to create that environment, and it looks different. You know, it looks different for every place where you are. You have to adapt to the needs of your organization and your department. But these tips can be applied anywhere, and it can make all the difference. And so, just in this, you know, in the place especially in the place we find ourselves in right now, where we do have very real things going on globally that affect the human mind and the body and the soul and the spirit and all of these things. You know, it is very real. We have to make sure that humanity is at the root, because we cannot build anything on top of that without that solid foundation. And the solid foundation of our organizations are the people who are responsible for putting on the works, okay, and for advertising the works, and all of the different things that we do. So that's my 2 cents. You know, we've had a lot of positivity on this episode, but you know, I want Quo to give positive notes, because I think it's necessary. Because I mean, right now it's tough out there, and you know, it's a standard part of the show. So Quo, if you will lead us into positive notes.
Positive notes for today's episode. I want to express gratitude to everybody who's joined us, everybody who's hopped into the space to say hello, who hops out, and then to those of us who continue to move in community. We see the evidence, and I want to encourage us to be bold in the fact that we see the evidence and what it means and how things shift and how things matter when we center humanity, when we center what people are actually experiencing, not what we think they're experiencing or how we should interpret it or what we want to use it for profit. Not that we should not make profit, but that comes as a result, and better comes as a result, right, of what it means to allow people to be humans in the space. We are automatically in dehumanizing systems. We really are. And it's not something that we do on purpose. It's systemic. In that way, it's self-sustaining in the ways in which we believe we should adhere to certain things. I challenge us to be creative because we are creative individuals. I challenge us to be bold because we're opera and we're loud. I challenge us to be just as innovative and to include all of the voices and experiences and the beautiful ways in which we start to connect, to include those things in the ways that we start to connect all the opera and all of the other art forms that make up opera. We said it before, which means many works. This is a very big art form. So that means it can fit many works, it can fit many people, it can fit many voices, it can fit many experiences, it can fit many narratives. In this, as we look at what it means to shape our organizations, let our organization be the result of many works. Let our opera organizations, let our art industry, let our industries, period, be the example of what it means for us to bring this work forward and to bring this art form forward. Know that we don't have to do it alone, as always, because that's what it means to move in community. This work is contagious once you actually dig deep, and once you're in it, you are supported by it. So with that, those are my positive notes.
Thank you so much, Quo. Folks, thank you all for joining us. Remember, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and please acknowledge your humanity, okay, that root. Please acknowledge that your humanity during this time. Produce the best that you can with what you have in the moment. Know that you are not alone. Know that we think about you, and know that you know, we have your back. We have your back. Thank you all so much for joining us, Quo. As usual, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
If you want to talk to us, reach out to us, please feel free to shoot a message to Dallas Opera on here. They'll get it to us. You can also hit us up on our Facebook page and our personal Instagram accounts. Yep. And with that, that wraps up our show. Thank you all so very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.